Hello and welcome to my world and yet another tier list making video. This is being recorded February 23rd, 2023. And the subject is actually inspired by a game I've been streaming fairly recently on Twitch at the time of this recording, WWE 2K22. The first night I was streaming that, I was looking down the roster, see who I knew, who I didn't know, and so forth, and Fel Kim Chi asked where would I rate them on a tier list. And so I figured, okay, that would be a good idea for a tier list video. So all credit goes to Fel Kim Chi for basically giving me the idea for this. This video is focused on WWE era stars of the Attitude Era. Most people define the Attitude Era as being fall 1997 up through March of 2001. I define it more of being summer 1996 up through the end of March 2002. So that's just me by in general. And why my specific definition? Because the some mid 1996 is basically when Steve Austin breaks it's uh wins King in the Ring and starts developing his iconic personality that most people identify with him as. So, and of course, March 2002 is just before the WWF rebrands into being WWE. So WrestleMania 18 happens, and a lot of so basically the last chunk of the WWF Attitude Era is in that time frame. So let's get to it. Bret Hart, Bret the Hitman Hart is the first one here. One without question, A tier, and I say A tier because he turned heel in 1997 because the crowds were turning against him, being against the typical white meat babyface, and became a very effective heel. The reason I'm not putting him in the S tier is because 1997 was his last year in the WWF. And all the shenanigans, backstage shenanigans with Shawn Michaels, injuries that he's had, that he's suffered, a kind of limited how much in ring action he saw um, that year was quite known. And while a very part of the early years of the Attitude Era, again, 1990, he comes back from his hiatus in November 1996. He's there through to November 1997. So it's real key, and a lot of key things in the WWF does not happen without Bret Hart. But because he was gone by the end of 1997 with the whole Montreal incident, I can't put him S tier. Gold Dust, again, another forerunner to the Attitude Era. He debuts as a character. Was it late 1995 ish? And so as an androgynous character, using a lot of typical people's phobias towards certain lifestyles. And he became a very interesting heel character. Um, Problem is, he became more of a babyface, and as the Attitude Era and more over the top things started to happen, he kind of got lost in the shuffle. Um, he had that weird turn as being just Dustin Runnels for a time, which really didn't go anywhere, and flipped back to Goldust as a babyface, and again, really just lost in the shuffle. So Goldust, sorry, B tier. Terry Runnels, aka Marlena. Um, as Marlena packaged with Goldust, definitely a good like package unit. But as Terry Runnels, everything with the fake pregnancy angles, the pretty mean sisters nonsense, the thing involving Sean Stasiak that she wore him out in a rather provocative manner before his matches, so he always lost. Yeah, D tier. D tier. There is no doubt there. It's like entertaining at times, but it was like, what was the point? It's like Jim Danville Neidhart really only in the WWF for like the as part of the Hart Foundation in the Attitude Era. So this is like 1997, so mid 1997 after the Bret Hart turns heel, gets with unites the British Bulldog and Owen Hart, but Jim the Anvil Neidhart really contributed nothing. So F tier. The Godfather, it's time once again to get aboard the Who Train. As a character, very over the top, very entertaining. No one cared about his matches because he wasn't that good in the ring. It's more about his entrance and everything else, his catchphrases. Um, but it's really a product of the era. But the character has popped up several times. Like like he turned into the Good Father as part of the Right to Censor in 2000, and then they repackaged him back as the Godfather as going quote unquote legit. Then they turned him. Then they, but because the character as just basically it's a pimp, and so C tier, really nothing more you can really do about it. It's a character locked in there, and was a cute mid card act. Got the crowds happy and everything, and there was crowd interaction and so forth. Shane McMahon. Uh, now how do I break this up? Sucked as a color commentator, but surprised folks as being a above average spot monkey type special attraction wrestler. Like he saw in small doses, like once in a blue moon, like Shane McMahon being put in a match was kind of interesting. As a character, yeah, it's kind of all over the place. Really shouty on the microphone. And so I'm just going, I'll go B tier there. Them damn Dudley Boys, part of the tag team scene, and it's amazing how badly the WWE as a whole has treated tag team wrestling, considering in the heyday of the golden era of the 1980s and in the Attitude Era, the tag teams were a huge part of what made those eras special and significant because you had these different types of acts. Tag team wrestling, when done right, is incredible. And I'm not talking with like ladders, tables, chairs, things of that sort. I'm talking traditional, old school tag team wrestling. You want to argue with me on this? Look up any match featuring the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express in Jim Crockett promotion. So we're talking like 85, 86, 87. And watch how any combination of the Midnight Express, if it's Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, or Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane versus Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, that's just the definition textbook great tag team wrestling. As far as the Dudleys go, mostly known for just putting people through tables, they weren't really given much mic work. They were associated with a lot of major storylines. They were very over. Um, as baby faces, as heels, it could be a little tepid at times, but they mostly were kept as baby faces, which surprised a lot of folks because they were heels. They were real hated in ECW. Um, and I would argue they were the most physical tag team outside the APA. I'll go B here because the Dudleys were able to produce on big stages and have great matches. The Rock, obviously that's S tier. There is no doubt about that. Um, debuts late 1996 at Survivor Series. Oh wait, was it 19? No, yeah, 96. Gets booed heavily because he, again, much like Bret Hart, is like the WWF fans were not buying into the typical white meat baby face anymore. Uh, Rock gets injured, comes back as a heel, joins the Nation of Domination, starts giving over when he starts referring to himself in the third person, starts getting various catchphrases, and gradually gets more and more over. And became a defining star, and breaks out to be a movie star, and is a major reason why the WWE it doesn't try and let any superstar or wrestler get to be huge on their watch anymore, because there's always the threat that they could get up and leave for Hollywood at any given time if they catch on, and so forth. Stephanie McMahon. I'm actually going A tier with Stephanie because no one saw how good she could actually be as a character. I mean, she debuts as, a soft spoken, fairly innocent daughter of Vince McMahon, caught up in a world of like a betrayal and so forth, and being used as a pawn. And then the entire McMahon Helmsley era happens, and she just turns it on. She becomes literally the most hated woman in all of wrestling, and for good reasons, because her character work was awesome. So A tier for Stephanie McMahon. Next, the Big Boss Man. I'm going D tier because there is a major missed opportunity here, and it kind of exposes how stupid Vince Russo was as a writer. The you have the Big Boss Man's role because he comes back. Was it mid 1998 to serve as Vince McMahon's enforcer in his war against Steve Austin? All fine and good. Boss Man serves is perfectly fine in that role. Fast forward to 1996, you got this war, the storyline involving the ministry, the corporate ministry versus Vince McMahon, and there is a moment of time where Big Boss Man appears to turn babyface because it's everything that's being caught up in it, and it looks like he's gonna break out and become the boss man that a lot of fans remember from the late 1980s. The guy who did Law and Order. Yeah, he did bad things, but you know what? He had his limits of how far he was going to be pushed. Uh, and then they stepped back from it, and it just killed his character the rest of the way. Boss Man was just persona non grata. He had a few moments. The feud with Al Snow was real entertaining, but they had an opportunity to turn him into a babyface, which they actually needed at the time because of how heel heavy the roster was in mid 1999. They actually needed another babyface to kind of like neutralize to balance things out a little bit. Bossman could have filled that role, and it was like a missed opportunity. If they turned him face, even for like a few months in the middle of 1999, I would have put him up to a C tier. But he was kept in the enforcer role, and in the hardcore division, he had the infamous feud with the Big Show at the end of 1999. But that was basically it. Bossman needed something else as a character. Ken Shamrock, C tier. Shamrock, injury prone for one. Uh, Matches can be a little sloppy, not great on the mic, and kind of hit or miss with what feuds he was being put in. Having him with the corporation and tag teaming with the Big Boss Man for a time served as a nice novelty, but it did nothing for either character. And by the time Shamrock, suffered those injuries in like this late summer, early fall 1999, and he decides he's going to go back to the UFC, no one actually really cared at that point. But he was memorable, great themes. He had his character moments. Mick Foley, Mankind, B tier, and I know that will piss people off. B tier for Mick Foley, and I'll tell you why it's B tier. As a character, great, awesome, incredible, great mic work, great character work, and everything of that sort. As a wrestler, the stupid stunts and risk and bumps that he took knocks him down for me. Most people will put Mick Foley, Mankind up in the S tier for because of all of that. I penalize him for it. Because if you have to take stupid risk to get over and stay over with the audience, uh, then you're not as good as you think you are, in my book. Albert, Prince Albert, debuts as a partner for Draws and really does nothing of note. He wins the IC title in 2001 for a hot minute, but he was just a body on the roster. It wasn't until like 2002 when he starts teaming with Scotty Too Hottie that he actually shows he could be more than just a big dude. But he prior to that, no character work, nothing. It's like F. Kane, the Big Red Machine Kane, for someone who mostly did not talk for a good portion of the Attitude Era, and was able to convey a lot of emotions under that mask and everything. And we separate how stupid Glenn Jacobs, the man under the mask, actually is with a lot of his political views. Uh, Kane, A tier. It was like great character work without even having to talk. It was all mostly body language with a lot of times. And one was dare say that he was actually a better big man wrestler than The Undertaker, particularly in the Attitude Era, because The Undertaker was basically breaking down at that point and needed to take a lot of time off. Edge, strictly Attitude Era, because you get past the Attitude Era when he starts being moved up the card and into the main event, which starts happening like 2000 with the brand split, the original SmackDown 6. That's a separate category there. Strictly Attitude Era as a tag in the tag team with Christian, Edge and Christian, very entertaining. Sure, they took all the big high spot bumps were mostly kept to the ladder matches and gimmick matches on big shows, not during Monday Night Raws or SmackDowns or Sunday Night Heats or anything of that sort. Um, Edge being like a big, surfer dude with again, and I can also put Christian in the same category here when we get to him for almost the same reasons. Great character work, had great matches and everything, and it was a solid mid card act. And he gets obviously I'm putting him B tier because of the success he would carry on. He would carry that forward. Is that Jeff Hardy or Matt Hardy? Just double check on here. Is this that is Jeff Hardy. Strictly Attitude Era, and actually, and because if I was to include everything post Attitude here, I would definitely penalize them. But Jeff Hardy, never good on the mic, really only good for doing big spots. His selling can be all right, but C tier is like there's a reason why the Hardy Boys weren't given mic time because they were terrible, and Jeff was the worst one of the two on the microphone. Not that Matt Hardy was that much better. China, and I said this a couple of days ago at the time of this recording. China as a big, powerful presence, a bodyguard type role, perfect for that. But when I start thinking about the character work, her mic skills were awful. Her wrestling skills were even worse. Most people look at she had great character interaction with Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero. I look at that as going, that is some of the most cringeworthy shit I have ever seen in pro wrestling. And so I am being kind here by putting her in the C tier. Because if I was just judging her, because China in the Attitude Era is basically the tale of two of three different things. You have when she debuts up until mid 1999, basically being the bodyguard muscle of Triple H and D Generation X. She turns heel, joins the corporation, and starts, and then they have like her, and then the whole thing with her being put in the Royal Rumble is like a nice novelty because of her powerful powerful built body. It's like, okay, and it was always sure she could beat up some of the male wrestlers, when the storyline called for it. But then when she started having matches, and it wa- got r- it was really clear she was not up to par to hold up her end of the bargain in a wrestling match, despite her physical presence. So once you get into her having to have regular matches on a regular basis, involving the likes of Chris Jericho, Hardcore Holly, and others, Val Venus comes to mind. It really got exposed there. So C tier, and again, like most people will say, like the Mamacita stuff with Eddie Guerrero was really good. Yeah, and let's not forget like her being shoehorned into the women's division as well, where she was just too damn big and powerful for any of the other women to actually look like a threat to her. So it's like really an oddity there. So C tier. The Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, Hulk and Animal, the Rebel Rush, strictly the Attitude Era, D tier. LOD was long in the tooth at this point. Hulk had his personal demons. Animal was kind of limited in what he could do. They tried repackaging them with Sunny as LOD 2000. They put Draws with them as well, but it was the end of basically the end of the road for for the Road Warriors at that point in time. So D tier in terms of it. They did their job. They got the New Age Outlaws over as a tag team. So Val Venus. Again, a career that was basically ruined because of a gimmick. His gimmick was being an adult film star. His promos and vignettes were good, very creative in terms of getting heat with any opponent wrestler that happened to have an on-screen girlfriend or a female manager, um, or acquaintance that could be capitalized on. But there was only so far that character can go, and it peaked. It peaked. It's a C tier level here. He had fine. Val Venus had some fine matches, but none really memorable that can stand out as being an all time great. But it's a solid mid level act. That's about it. Vince McMahon as the Mr. McMahon character. Unfortunately, I have to go S tier with it because it's a big component of it, and basically the Vince McMahon character, and one could argue also with Stephanie McMahon and to Shane McMahon. Basically a huge problem going forward with WWE programming because of how much of it became focused on McMahon's when it really should not have been. Because people keep harking back to the Attitude Era, saying it's like the McMahons were a big part of it and they need to be the central to everything and so forth. But Vince McMahon had great character interactions with Stone Cold Steve Austin and everything, and they tried to end the story and move Vince off TV, but they kept putting him back on TV, and it. But he had moments and everything, great promos, memorable spots, and things of that nature. Great facial expressions in terms of being when things didn't go his way as it relates to the story. So it's S tier there. The APA, Bradshaw and Farouk, basically two guys who were really doing nothing in mid 1998, get put together as a tag team and then take off. Particularly once they start showing their personalities, of just being a couple of cigar smoking, card playing, beer drinking brutes, and people identify with that. Unfortunately, they were just mostly, a solid mid card act. You couldn't really count on the APA to give you a great tag team match with no matter despite how good the various tag teams were. Because the Dudleys were better than them in that regard. But if if a match required for this, two guys going out there and just kicking ass for a couple minutes, you can always count on the APA. Gangrel, the Vampire Warrior, basically was brought in as to help Edge get over, to be a heel foil for Edge. Gangrel really didn't have great promos. Matter of fact, I don't recall really one promo, and Edge outshined him in it. And that folks realized that Edge was going to uh, be the star of the Brood. But Gangrel, he had a great entrance, great music, great look. But D tier. The Undertaker in the Attitude Era. So one has to look at it this way because it's basically the end of his initial end of his. He got into Dark Sorcerer, Ministry of Darkness, Undertaker, and then he misses a good part of 1999, like late 1999 into the first half of 2000, and then comes back as the American Badass at Judgment Day 2000, if memory serves me right. I hate to say it, it's B tier because Taker was not as good as Kane in the ring. His character work was really not up to par because of the role that he was in. Uh, and when he came back as the American badass, it's like his ring work wasn't all that good. His character work even then wasn't all that good. He really didn't find himself uh, again fully to be like a great on-screen character until that heel turn in late 2001, where it becomes Big Evil, and that kind of really let the Undertaker re-cement himself. But the Attitude Era was not a good period of time. I was just like, it's B tier out of respect, but it is like and how he had the big feuds with Steve Austin. There was the storyline with Kane, and all the heavy build up into that in 1997, and the stuff with Austin in 1998, also involving McMahon. But once the Ministry of Darkness stuff starts popping up late 1998 and into up to mid late summer 1999, that just weighs it down, and the time away to recover from injuries and the tepid, you know, return as the American Badass, it's just B tier. The British Bulldog, two stints here. One from leading up to his departure at Survivor Series 1997. He's in the tag team with Owen Hart, initial European champion. All fine and good, nice mid card act, and then he comes back late 1999 from WCW, where after he suffered a major back injury, and it's clear he's not the same guy. He's nowhere near as good as he once was just 2 years prior, and unfortunately, a lot of that painkillers and led to his early demise. Unfortunately, but it's a D tier for the British Bulldog. Shawn Michaels, much like Bret Hart, like a very important part of laying the foundation of the Attitude Era. But a lot of great matches, great promo work. That's all fine and good. But the backstage antics that affected things being seen on television, and also Michaels gets hurt and misses and is forced to step away from the ring for a number of years. Doesn't return to have a match in the WWF until summer of 2002. So he's not really there for the duration. He has an on-screen commissioner role, but that was spotty at best because there's no point for him being the commissioner when Vince McMahon is on screen every week. They tried teasing different things like the former Corporation X with Michael, Triple H, China, and Shane McMahon. That went nowhere. So it's kind of like what could have been. They keep him as an on-screen character. They tried, but it isn't there. But he's getting up there because of the matches, his match work, his promo, his skills, and everything. That's why he gets into that A tier, but there's no way he's S tier as it relates to the Attitude Era. Badass Billy Gunn, C tier, great as a tag team in the tag team of the New Age Outlaws with the Road Dogg Jesse James, but as a singles performer, mediocre at best. Didn't have the mic work. His his stamina as a singles competitor was always called into question. Um, didn't really have great in-ring psychology as a babyface singles or a heel singles. So it's like he's a great tag team wrestler, hence why the Smoking Guns, the the New Age Outlaws, the team with Chuck Palumbo, but when they try to make him a single star, it just didn't go anywhere. Doesn't help that they put him in a feud with The Rock, and The Rock just buried him outright. S.A. Rios. His greatest contribution was bringing Lita to television. Lita was being his as part of his package, but as a character and everything, F tier. He really was nothing. Um, as a character, who was a cruiserweight wrestler who had no personality. That's Man, he had okay matches, but they weren't great. And most of the time, he wasn't even on Raw. He could barely make it on Heat most of the time too. So it's like really bottom rung. Mark Henry, Sexual Chocolate, the world's strongest man. Had some great character work, but the matches and in-ring psychology wasn't there. He wouldn't really figure it out until what? 2004, 2005, 2006? It's like with the what was it? The stuff run-ins with Batista and having a WrestleMania match with The Undertaker and then the introduction of the Hall of Pain, but that's all later. But again, Mark Henry had some fine character work, but as an in-ring performer, it was just awful. It was like they tried with him, but it's a D tier. Jerry the King Lawler. Well, he's screaming puppies anytime a woman was on screen. Didn't really have many matches. More like what was it? Early 2001 with the feud with the RTC. But Jerry was there, and he really wasn't getting involved in feuds at all. Like 97, 98, 99, or where it was like late 2000, early 2001, where he started getting involved with stuff. He wasn't really a major force, like at all. He did some stuff in like, what was it, late 97, early 98 with Brian Christopher. He was kind of involved with storylines involving the light heavyweight division, but that, it was kind of there. But Jerry Lawler, his presence was there every week. Test, guy who so much potential and just squandered. Test is a guy whose basically career derailed uh, with uh, with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon becoming an on-screen power couple. Test basically got his all the momentum, all the goodwill, all the because fans were behind him. He was getting over as a top star. He could have been something. And he had great matches. He had one of the best damn diving elbows I've ever seen. They put him in a tag team with Albert, with Trish Stratus, but that was more to get Trish over. The test could have been something, but they intentionally derailed him. He had like a couple of really good matches, but sometimes he would have some really big crappy ones too. So kind of is what it is there. Hardcore Holly, the whole thing with the super heavyweight gimmick. It was cute and everything. Him being a big part of the hardcore division, those feuds out Snow, the introduction of Crash Holly and later Molly Holly was kind of like a big deal. It was like solid mid-level guy. not particularly good on the mic, but he got his point across. Christian, for much of the same reasons earlier I said with Edge, great character work, can deliver a great match without really having to put his body on the line too much in normal matches. Um, Most folks were kind of surprised with how good he actually became. I was among them, but again, it's like solid B tier, particularly in the Attitude Era. His shtick with Edge, very entertaining. Deborah McMichael with Jeff Jarrett, she had a purpose as being his manager, business associate, his way of distracting opponents with those big glorious tatas. But much like Terry Runnels, she really didn't serve a purpose, particularly when she once she married Steve Austin, was put with him as it's like when Austin turned heel, Deborah had a purpose, because she could be like the prissy wife to his like heel character, and that served as a nice comedic dynamic in the Alliance invasion storyline. But Deborah really didn't have much of a purpose. She was actually better in WCW, where she actually got a lot of mic time, and that was the other big thing in the WWF. Deborah really never spoke for long stretches of time. While in WCW, she had some great character work there, but in the WWF, like with Terry Runnels, Marlena, it was like D tier. Owen Hart. Unfortunately, the stupidity of Vince Russo led to the death of Owen Hart, because it was Vince Russo who came up with the idea of having Owen Hart descend from the rafters, and as a favor for some folks, Owen Hart could have been better utilized. Unfortunately, the WWF didn't capitalize on him being the lone Hart brother staying in the promotion, because Bret Hart left, Jim D'Anvil Neidhart was fired, British Bulldog left, Owen Hart stayed because they refused to let him out of his contract, but they didn't really do anything with him. He basically was used as a foil for Triple H and kind of floated around in 1998 before eventually teaming up with Jeff Jarrett, becoming the tag team champions. And that's really all you can really say about it. And then, of course, the return of the Blue Blazer, and then him falling to his death in Kansas City. All thanks to the stupidity of Vince Russo. D'Lo Brown. D'Lo was very good in the ring. He had good promo skills. Unfortunately, the night that he had this match with Draws, I believe it was in Philly, where Draws actually he dropped Draws during a power bomb spot, and Draws was paralyzed, and D'Lo, you can say his either confidence was shooken or something, or it raised a lot of concerns. Like D'Lo could have been so much more. He could have been an upper tier star. I could have seen D'Lo making it to the main event by late 2000, early 2001. D'Lo could have been put in that upper echelon, but whatever it was that led to his massive D push. Like they took the foot off the pedal real fast with him, and slammed the brakes on. Following that match was Draws, and yeah, there you go. X Pac, smarmy heel, and people really got sick of him. And I mean in a big way. It's like the phrase X Pac heat, go away heat, is basically derived for him because people got really sick and tired of seeing him. As a character, he was really just a greaseball. He was sleazy, particularly once the team with Kane was broken up, and he steals Kane's girlfriend Tori within the context of the storyline. Uh, but X Pac really didn't have much to offer. He was used a lot of times as the measuring stick to test new guys out to see if they had what it took. But It's a C tier. It's like mid as mid can be. I want to count this as the Mean Street Posse, two of which were Shane McMahon's actual friends. Another guy was added, Joey Abs. Uh, as being introduced as Shane McMahon's friends and Muscle, they did their job. Unfortunately, there was only going to be so much that could be done with them. And Rodney and Pete certainly improved over time. Joey Abs was decent, but they were essentially cannon fodder, low tier. Most people will look at their matches with with Briscoe and Patterson as being a reason to put them up in the C or even B tier, but that's one or two great segments doesn't define a career. Because look, I basically as great as characters as Val Venus and The Godfather were, I had to take into their whole body of work during the Attitude Era, and it's like the Mean Street Posse is mid as mid can be. Paul Bearer, come the Attitude Era, was basically once the Undertaker was written off TV because taken off TV for his injuries in late 1999. That was basically the end of Paul Bearer, and he wasn't really doing much at that point in time. I'm gonna go D tier because of the great stuff that was being done with the introduction of Kane. So like, and that build up in 1997. But once Paul Bearer and Undertaker reunited in 1998, and the whole Ministry of Darkness thing happened, and it was this. It was like it peaked in a rapid fall. Vader, not really much of a force in the Attitude Era. He was there obviously in 96, 97, and 98, but he wasn't really in that big spot. The match with Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 96 basically ruined Vader. So he's basically was pushed and it's like unfortunately D tier. Chris Jericho, as far as the Attitude Era goes, I'm begrudgingly I'm putting him in the A tier because he had great character work. Once he found himself, they initially tried doing a lot of the shtick from his WCW days. It was cute and all that. The feud with China really didn't do him any favors because China couldn't hold up her end of the bargain in the ring. It really wasn't until he has that faux WWF Championship match with Triple H in I want to say it was April 2000, and then he starts having the back and forth with Stephanie McMahon, and that Jericho really starts to shine, and of course, and he becomes a mega popular babyface, and then gradually has that nice heel turn that leads to him becoming the first ever undisputed champion that defeats The Rock and Steve Austin in the same night. If you don't know that, it was a fact. And I count that moment as being a part of the Attitude Era. So Jericho had a nice character restructuring and then pushed to a big moment. Road Dogg Jesse James, great charisma, terrible in ring performer. But much like Billy Gunn, when they try to push him as a singles, it didn't work. And he's great as a tag team wrestler. So it's like some guys got it as singles, some guys don't. Road Dogg didn't. Lita. Lita really wouldn't. Going. I'm going D tier here because Lita didn't really have a defined character. Sure, because she becomes Matt associated with the Hardys and Matt Hardy's on-screen girlfriend and real life girlfriend, but Lita didn't really have any defining moments in the Attitude Era because she wasn't really. There was really no one for her to feud with directly. She had it was basically the building blocks of what became the Lita Trish rivalry when the women's division was actually given a freaking chance somewhat and starting in November of 2002 and going forward with Lita will have matches starts feuding with Trish. And even then Lita doesn't come back on get involved with that until the return from her neck injury. And Trish is a heel at that point. So in strictly within the context of the Attitude Era, really can't say more about her because she got over. She was did run-in interference and so forth, but she wasn't really given mic time. She really didn't have a defined character of such, other than being a gorgeous woman who can do high flying moves. So that's not more I can say about that. Is this who I think it is? Chris Benoit. C tier, and again, I'm going to strictly here, just strictly going by what he did in the Attitude Era. Did he have great matches in that period? Kind of. None of it strictly within the Attitude Era in and of itself. So when he comes from WCW to the WWF in what was it, February of the year 2000, Benoit doesn't really have a any great matches until of note until WrestleMania 17 and that match with Kurt Angle. So he starts having those being put in long matches, and that shows what he can do. His character work was never really all that good. So that was always his biggest drawback. He has the in-ring intensity, he had the in-ring skills, but he didn't have the character work to be put where I can justify putting it up here. It's kind of like the antithesis of Val Venus, The Godfather, where they had the character work, but they didn't have, the in-ring skills to really justify pushing him up, putting him up higher. Brian Pillman, great character. Unfortunately, the injuries from that initial car wreck that fucked up his ankle really limited, and of course, his personal demons and everything led to his early demise of sorts. Um, Certainly didn't do no favors, and so it's like it's a D tier. It's like if Pillman came into the WWF healthy and where he could do a lot of the stuff that he was able to do in WCW, like in 1995. Pillman could have been something special. Probably, potentially, could have been B or even A tier, but no, the limitations that he was under following the fusing of his ankle, that's kind of like, all right, D tier. There's nothing more to really say there. Jacqueline, C tier because she basically she carried Sable as best she could, and though when they revitalized the women's title in uh summer of 1998, Jacqueline had some nice character work as an on-screen accomplice of Mark Miro. Mike's skills was kind of like hit or miss at times, but Jackie could get it done in the ring. There is no doubt in my mind about that. Unfortunately, she didn't really have great people to work with. You look at the women's division, specifically 1998, 1999. Tori doesn't come in until spring 1999. Ivory comes in like in May 1999. Luna Vachon was in and out of the company because of her issues with Sable. So it was Jacqueline was basically kind of limited in what they could do, and particularly when they weren't having Sable wrestle, because her. So it's like, what can you do with Jacqueline? And so, like, if they took the women's division more seriously, had put actual perform people there that could wrestle there a lot sooner, a lot earlier, um, Jacqueline could have easily put B tier there. Same thing with Lita. It could have elevated her in a big way. If anything, that would have actually devalued, in my mind, Terry and Deborah more than what they were. Tori, as I just mentioned, was brought in to feud with Sable. And Tori had experience. She was in what? There was a women's promotion that in the early '90s she was involved in, and I know she wrestled in Japan. But for what I guess too much ring rust and everything, by the time the WWF called her in to like feud with Sable, it was like the ring rust was there, and she had a couple decent matches. She had a like from the stuff I remember from her on TV. Tori could be have a good match with the right opponent, but also on top of that, she didn't really have great character work either. So it's like she wasn't good on the microphone. So while Jackie was hit or miss, Jackie gets put up here. The Big Show, strictly in the Attitude Era, and one has to remember that the Big Show missed a large, the majority of 2000. It was sent to OVW to get in shape. Um, it's like it's kind of hit or miss with him at times. Like he's a big giant. Unfortunately, the WWF did not book him as a giant. It didn't book him as anything special. It's like, which is funny considering how they treated Andre the Giant. But this being the Attitude Era and everything, the mystique of the Big Show was lost real quick, real. Like the second he was like, who was the first person to beat him? I think it was Austin that beat him. We said, oh well, Austin beats that would have beaten everybody. Yeah, but when you have someone who is 7 feet tall, 500 pounds, as a legit giant, you don't want him being beat quickly. You want him being established as a dominant threat, and then you build up someone to eventually beat him. Unfortunately, they WWE didn't really do that with Big Show until later on, when he was more established within their promotion. But in the context of the Attitude Era, Big Show was nothing special of note. He was like mid tier. Al Snow, great character work. Was kind of like shoehorned into the hardcore division. Tried to make Steve Blackman interesting. I always thought Blackman, that's a different story there. The stuff involving the mannequin head, literally named Head, it was fine for what it was, but and his feud with the Big Boss Man was in for the hardcore title was nice, but was he? Could I put him in the B tier, A tier, or even S tier? No, Al Snow, solid mid level act. It's like he had his role and he played to that role. Dean Malenko. Unfortunately, he was in a period of time where the WWF was not really treating the light heavyweight title seriously, as he had the title and really didn't have anyone to feud with over it. They, takes it off of SA Rios, trades it with Crash Holly, uh, and no, he loses it to Crash Holly, who loses it to Jerry Lynn. Dean had some nice moments when became a quote unquote ladies' man and pursued Lita for a time. But D tier is like not more I can say about that. It's like the in ring work with her, and he was starting to slow down as an in ring performer at this point too. So he tried to, and he wasn't a great character to begin with. So if he developed an on-screen character and personality years sooner before he even made it to the WWF, potentially he could have been like a C tier, but no. Viscera, the former Mabel, one F. He didn't really have a character. He was just a big dude as part of the ministry, tag teaming with Midian at times, but there was nothing more to Viscera in the Attitude Era. He was just, there. It's like he had no character. They tried years later making him Big Daddy V, the world's largest love machine, but then again, that was what? 2006, 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere mid 2000s. It's like where he finally had a character of sorts. But as far as the Attitude Era goes, no. Eddie Guerrero, B tier. When When Eddie was straight, had his head on right, great in the ring, and had certainly a great character. And he was definitely on the rise. Unfortunately, his own issues kind of took him out of the picture for going forward. But yeah, the Attitude Era for him is again because Eddie was out of the picture for the majority of 2001. It was like basically the entire Alliance storyline. It's like he's gone, he's out of the company. He doesn't come back till what spring of 2002. So he's like what he did in the Attitude Era specifically. It was fine. It was B tier. I mean, it was a nice upper tier stories and stuff of that sort. Certainly made China interesting, but can't really put him in the upper echelon, the A tier. Linda McMahon. Linda, unfortunately, of the four McMahons, I'm going to go D tier because her single purpose was essentially to occasionally pop up and make a declaration that put the rest of the family in check if they were running out of control too much. Um, Used very sparingly, again, only in special occasions. Um, Very flat on the microphone. Obviously, not a wrestler, but again, so there you go. Kurt Angle makes his debut, Survivor Series 1999, and quickly finds himself as a performer. The year 2000, he shows he's not afraid to be a fool, and he's rapidly moved up into the main event. It's like Kurt Angle's ascent from debut to when he was champion is actually remarkable when you actually watch it and just pay attention to how he's utilized. And sure, he's a goofy heel, but he's also a very credible wrestler. So it was like it made sense. And once he made it to the main event level, he's like he never moved from it really. He's like he was always seen as a top tier level threat. Um, the Alliance storyline did wonders for his character that showed he could be a top level babyface. Sure, Angle is a much better heel, but if he had the right uh dance partners, he could have been like a box office level babyface, and I could have put him S tier without question. Wait. Oh wait, that's not. This is Mark Henry here. Who the hell is this? Oh, this is Ahmed Johnson. I just realized it because I'm looking at it. It's like that's Mark Henry. Take what I said about Mark Henry before in a second there. Ahmed Johnson is also D tier. Injury prone. He had charisma, but injuries and wasn't really all that good. Um, he was a head case. So boy, did I screw that up. I'm not gonna start this over because I'm already an hour into this video. So Ahmed Johnson, injury prone, not really good in the ring, really couldn't speak on the mic, but he had that natural charisma. If he could have figured out, if he could have avoided injuries, gotten better as an in-ring performer, and be coherent on the microphone, he could have been something special. There was something there with Ahmed Johnson, but unfortunately, all the other factors were a problem. Triple H, and they have him with Stephanie here, but Triple H, A tier. Was the one at S tier. It was like, well, number one, Triple H. I never view Triple H as the guy. He's the guy that works with the guy. It's like he's the guy you put in the ring to work with the top babyface, to help them get over or be that smart that chicken shit heel champion. Uh, Unfortunately, Triple H could be booked as being too dominant at times. Because the whole thing is him being the game and that he was that damn good, which didn't always make sense when considering how many matches he had that had like outside interference at times. But he had his promos, and once he turned heel It became a more serious hero and a credible main eventer. Uh, it's like, okay, he's a solid A tier guy. Like he could have good matches, yes. Could he cut a good promo, yes. Uh, he also his tendency to bury his opponents and either subtly or directly through his verbiage could. I'm also taking points off of that. Matt Hardy in the Attitude Era, in and of itself, like Jeff, not good on the mic, and I would argue Matt didn't really get any better as far as I'm concerned. Like bit too much of a risk taker, more grounded than Jeff in the ring, actually a better worker than Jeff. But as characters, they weren't really given the microphone much to speak. Um, they were basically the foils for Edge and Christian for the most part. So they existed. No real defining characters. It really wasn't until like the brand split and Matt Hardy version 1 where actually gets a character. Steve Blackman, C tier, and not because of the tag team without Snow. Steve Blackman was about as straight laced as you can get. He was just an ass kicker. All right, you could have him powering around, but he could have been a straight face member of the APA if they wanted to go that route with it. They could, um, but he was very straight laced. He was good in the ring. He could give you a good match. And when they put him in the hardcore division, that took advantage of his martial arts background. He shined there. The tag team he formed with Grandmaster Sexy actually was doing him a Blackman Water good in terms of really getting a personality, mostly because of his reactions of how stupid or surreal various things were. But as it pertained to Grandmaster Sexy, which started with Al Snow to an extent, but it was better with Grandmaster Sexy because it was more of an odd couple pairing because Grandmaster Sexay, Brian Christopher was a lot more, uh, hip hop cool white guy from Tennessee, like in with the hip hop style dance moves and everything of that sort. So C tier for Grandmaster for Steve Blackman. Patterson and Briscoe, they had their moments. It's like they had a great moments as the Stooges being associated with Vince McMahon. A lot of comedic moments. Their match with the Mean Street Posse is I believe is still the most viewed single match in the history of Monday Night Raw. So that counts for something. Uh, they started to be a little bit overexposed, but once the McMahon Helmsley era started and Patterson Briscoe were basically removed, no, they were kind of involved with that, and that kind of hurts them a bit there. Now that I remember it, the whole King in the Ring and stuff with everything leading into that, it's kind of like, yeah. But going forward, like once you got past, once the Patterson Briscoe were basically removed as being on-screen characters, uh, they were a nice novelty act. I mean, packaged with Vince McMahon, the feud with the Mean Street Posse, they served a nice role there, and people they got over. It's like they were legends, and that most people know them from the Attitude Era. My age and younger uh, would remember them from that period of time. Perry Saturn, uh, the Saturn was so much better in WCW as an in-ring performer, uh, and his character work was never really all that good. They gave him a few things to work with in the Attitude Era, like the mop. They paired him with Terry Runnels for a time. They gave him stupid hats to wear, but like he re- and I guess with all the concussions that he had, they make him more of a bit of a loon. But like it was like a D tier. It's like you wouldn't really see him on Raw or SmackDown for stretches, and nobody like you see him on Sunday Night Heat or the syndicated programs, but no one really cared about Saturn. Sorry. Crash Holly found his niche, introduced as Hardcore Holly's cousin, was being a super heavyweight weighing over 400 pounds, and then found his way in the hardcore division, being like the introduction of the 24/7 rule. A lot of great character work. Matches, was more about him surviving and escaping with the belt. A lot of stuff folks saw with the 24/7 title and the gimmicks associated with that could originate with Crash Holly and what was done with him and the hardcore title back in 2000 and into the early 2001. Once they moved him away from it, put him in the light heavyweight division, wins the title there, but kind of came aimless. It was without the him being chasing or having the hardcore title, there was most people didn't really care about Crash. So it's like he was kind of like there. Jim Ross, C tier is like I personally don't like Jim Ross as a color commentator. I never have. So it's like, oh, he's the greatest voice of all time. Like, no, no, he's not, as far as I'm concerned. Speaking of like everything he says is always in sound bites and so forth. So it's like, Um, he had his nice banter with Jerry Lawler. He could get the bit. Uh, he had a clear personal bias at times in terms of. You can always tell like who he was really behind and who he wasn't behind in terms of getting them over on the mic from the announce position. So it's like you can tell when you can always tell when Jr. gave a shit, and a lot of times he clearly didn't. They haven't hit. This is Ivory, but this photo includes all the RTC: Goodfather, Bill Buchanan, Steven Richards, and Val Venus. I'm just judging this as Ivory, and Ivory in and of herself is B tier. She was introduced to be the valet for Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. She broke out from that role, became the women's champion, had great memorable matches with the Fabulous Moolah of all people. Had a nice little feud with Tori. Had a great hardcore match with Luna Vachon. I think that was either I think that was either. I think that was No Mercy 99. No, or Unforgiven 99 had the hardcore match. Her prude nature. Uh, uh, which really could have said was like the total opposite because the lady who played Ivory, Lisa Moretti, I believe her name is, like shoot interviews and things of that nature. She's a complete loon in a good way, but her on screen character work is just awesome. Ivory, as far as I'm concerned, is the best overall female character, not named Stephanie McMahon, in the Attitude Era because Ivory got it. It's like she could wrestle, she could talk, she had great reactions. She was very entertaining. Rikishi, C tier. Nice novelty act as a big Samoan guy who can dance. The heel turn as him being revealed as the guy who ran down Steve Austin really hurt his character overall, and no one really could take him seriously because no one bought into it. But it doesn't help that the explanation was he did it for the Rock. So I was like, C tier there for Rikishi. Too cool as a tag team. Again, nice novelty. Put him with Rikishi, so that's a nice three person unit. Scotty 2 Hotty will break out to be a fairly decent singles tie competitor in the light heavyweight division. When Grandmaster Sexy got injured, and when the vice versa happened, Grandmaster, formed a nice tag team with Steve Blackman before getting himself fired by taking substance up into Canada. Um, like they had nice characters. They were a great act. It's like their dancing segments were really cool. Were always a highlight. It was probably the best part of their matches. Unfortunately, they were very much overshadowed. It's like you had Edge and Christian, you had the Dudleys, you had the Hardys. Uh, you, So like the Too Cool was kind of on the par with the APA as well. So it's like, so you had like uh, but you had like 6 teams deep, and that's not even all the teams because you had the Holly Cousins that were later introduced. And the New Age Outlaws were around. Dude, not 2000 ish, because Billy Gunn was injured for a good portion of 2000. So it was like, but the combination of Road Dogg and X Pac was kind of a thing. Trish Stratus, strictly Attitude Era, C tier. Um, Trish gets introduced as a manager for Test and Albert. They were basically there to get her over as a manager. She splits from them, has the on-screen quote unquote romance with Vince McMahon. Breaks out a little bit with the at WrestleMania 17, has the awkward rivalry with Lita over her being involved with the Jeff Hardy when Lita's involved with Matt Hardy. Then he had the alliance stuff, and Trish winning the women's title at the Survivor Series 2001. Trish had a nice progression, but it was gradual and everything. Her best work is well after the Attitude Era, but as a character, you could tell something was there, but it wasn't like it needed to be molded, it needed to be found. It kind of like with Lita, is like there was something there, but it needed more. And Trish was a better character than Lita, particularly in the Attitude Era, because Trish got promo time, she got mic time, and that match with Stephanie McMahon at No Way Out 2001 is is still a great brawl between two at the time non wrestlers. Howard Finkel, ring announcer. Okay, he was fine, but I say Tony Chimel was a much better ring announcer. He had some character work. It was as Chris Jericho's flunky, but for a brief period of time. But C tier. Like he's the ring announcer. He had the awkward feud with Lillian Garcia. What was that? I think that was like 2002, 2003 ish. Kaientai, Taka Michinoku, and Sho Funaki. They were great with the when they started doing the dub dialogue on them. As that was a nice touch, and then Taka breaking his face at the 2000 Royal Rumble. Uh, Funaki winning the hardcore title in at the WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 16 for a hot minute or two, but you rarely, if you can go stretches of time without seeing them on Raw or SmackDown, and and so it's like it's D tier here. They're definitely B show stars, and it's like they had moments, but it really wasn't sustained. And Stone Cold Steve Austin, yes, he's going S tier. There is no doubt about that. Like I said, it's like the Attitude Era could be argued with the catalyst was King of the Ring 1996 after Austin was split from DiBiase and the feud with Bret Hart, and then the neck injury at SummerSlam 97 and everything, all those bits and pieces, like all that momentum, everything that happened like into the formation of Steve Austin, and one could argue that the Attitude Era ended at WrestleMania 17 because Austin wanted to turn heel. Unfortunately, WrestleMania was in Houston, Texas, and that was the wrong place to even attempt to do that. Not that it was a good idea to begin with. But since I'm counting the invasion stuff as up until stuff up until a little bit post WrestleMania 18 as part of the Attitude Era as well. Austin's heel work in the Invasion storyline was actually really, really good. So there you go. So that's this tier list. It took me an hour and 15 minutes to go through it. And so if you have your thoughts and opinions and so forth, leave them in the comment section below. And on that note, we will see you in the next video, whatever it may be. So till next time, tighten your friendship bracelets, stay safe, and have a good one.